All right, we're back for episode 81 of Digital Divination. Jason, how are you this week?
I'm doing pretty good, John. How are you?
Oh, it's a pretty nutso week for me
Mm,
last week, and especially this week. I have a whole bunch of medical stuff and work
mm.
stuff and game stuff coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
But once I get through this week,
Mm.
then I think it's smooth sailing
Oh,
for a
yeah.
bit. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good, good.
We talked about Starfinder comics before
Mhm.
in our last episode, and
Yeah.
you'll never guess who I'm gonna be interviewing here down the road.
Is it gonna be Sutter?
It's gonna be Sutter, yes.
Nice.
But it's gonna be a little bit further down the road. It's gonna be like, June-ish, I think, when it comes out because he wants to do it in part of his release. He's got a novel coming out and the comics
Yes.
are
Yeah.
coming out, so, but
That makes sense.
if there's any burning questions you have or any of our listeners have about the upcoming, Paizo comics,
Mhm.
I'll be able to ask him. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, just tell him I said hi.
Well, I'll do that as well.
Sure.
I will do that. It's funny because 'cause I've been wanting to interview him, and, I've been told he was a tough person to get to do interviews, but because he's got so much coming out now,
Yeah.
he's interested in doing it, and so he had posted on Twitter, and actually Ryan from the network had said, "Hey, Sutter's kinda posted this thing," and so I reached out to him on Twitter, and boom, we set it up, so I'm pretty excited.
Great. Terrific.
Alright, so what's anything new with you?
I just this week, yeah, so getting through this week, at the end of this week, I'm, taking a little trip, back home to New Jersey to see my
Mhm,
folks and kinda just hang out for a weekend. I'm just gonna surreptitiously use that weekend to write some freelance, when
nice.
everyone goes to bed at, like, 9:30 and I'm still awake for another 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, I'm
nice.
kinda looking forward to it a little bit, but also I'm terrified to get on a plane. Uh,
Oh.
partially because, like, I took my flight out there is a overnight flight. It's a red eye, sure, and I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah,
this is
those are
gonna
kinda
wipe me
rough.
out."
Yeah,
Basically, get here, get on the plane at
right,
11
right,
PM here
right,
in
right,
Seattle, and it's, like, gonna be
right.
6 AM in New Jersey when I land. So I'm like, "Ugh, I'm gonna have to sleep the rest of that afternoon off."
I know, I have a hard time sleeping on the red eye, like, that's the idea, is
Yeah.
like, you conk out, you wake up, and you're ready to go, and it's like, "No, I'm awake the whole time,
Oh, there's
and
too
then I
much
have to
light and
sleep the
noise.
whole." Yeah, or excitement too for me, like, usually
Yeah.
going somewhere you're excited about. So, well, good, well, I'll miss you. I'm glad you're not missing any episodes, so that's
No.
good.
I'll
I was
only be
I
gone
was
for a
getting
couple
worried.
days.
Right. Excellent, excellent. Alright, so, last time we talked about comics finally, and we did say we were gonna talk about uh, Paizo's announcement about partnering with DKOM Studios for
Yes,
doing
I think
video games.
yeah, I know. That's good because Alcat is sort of, kind of done not done I would say they're done with Pathfinder or Paizo, but, like, they're on to moving to a 40K game.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah.
know. I was wondering why Paizo wasn't continuing to work with them.
No, they what was that, maybe 6, 8 months ago, Alcat, like,
Yeah,
started releasing some images that looked very spacey, and everyone got very
yeah,
excited that
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
Starfinder video game, and it's not. It is a Rogue Trader Warhammer 40K game. So, should be cool. I don't know.
Right, right. Well, they have this new partner, and they've said that they're going to be doing two video games coming out, and it looks like they've done quite a bit of. I don't know what type of design do you call these? These aren't 3D games, really, are they? Ones that are
Well
doing
I think it's pronounced, Become or Becom. I keep
become
saying
okay.
Become first, but I think it's Becom.
Okay.
I know they do all sorts of different things. Some of them are 3D, some of them look more
Yeah.
2D, some of them are kind of games.
Right. Right. Looks like a lot of
Um,
just the design looks a lot of the artwork looks like a lot of mobile-ish stuff.
oh, sure,
Maybe
yeah,
mobile.
yeah. But, they apparently did this, Tomb of Annihilation,
Mhm.
adaptation, which is a D&D board game. So,
Mhm.
that's got kinda like turn-based combat, kind of fighting,
Right.
right? And they've also worked somehow I don't exactly know how they worked on Age of Empires 4. Kind of weird to me that's on their list. That maybe it was a port that they worked on or something like that, but, hey, I think I saw someone on Twitter were like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Starfinder." RTS would be pretty cool. I'm like, oh,
Well, right now, I think it says they're 2 Pathfinder titles,
yes, yeah.
what it
It's
is. So
it's
I
only
think
Pathfinder for now.
mhm. But I would imagine if they nail that down and would move on. I actually think if they're doing, 2nd edition rules,
Hmm.
just doing 2 games, it seems like you would wanna do more once you build out that engine
Sure.
and put in the rule set and
Yeah.
everything. So, maybe they would end up doing them like, for every adventure path. Who knows,
Yeah, that's
kinda
a
thing.
lot. I mean, it doesn't need to be a direct uh, port of something that already exists too. It could be something new,
Yeah,
right? Or if it is indeed like isometric-y,
right,
CRPG kind of game,
right,
yeah, you might as well take the adventure pass. That seems to be a tried and true way to do things. As the story's already there, you just need to flesh it out with stuff that may not be, will be present more in a sort of table game where you might, be able to go on tangents and whatnot, and just add some side quests, Path of the Righteous
right.
and Kingmaker. But if it's something else, like there was, oh my god, I'm just now remembering, there was this kind of card. It didn't go very far. I think it stopped pretty quick. It was like a mobile card game that was for Pathfinder. It
Mhm,
was vaguely like Hearthstone.
mhm, mhm,
I cannot remember
mhm.
the
Well, that would make I mean, with some of the design work they have, if they did something Hearthstone-y, that would kinda make sense for doing already. Um, yeah, no, and if they were to adapt, maybe if they're doing an adventure card game adaptation, maybe that's a little bit more straightforward than trying
maybe.
to do
Yeah.
the actual 2nd edition rule set. I don't think they say anything about what specifically they're doing.
No, it's been real quiet about what it is,
Yeah.
but one of them's coming out this year at some point.
Right, right, so it's been being
Um,
worked on for a while.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. At least, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Then the other next year, the development cycles on these things, I would imagine, is probably at least 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, generally, yeah. I
Yeah.
imagine my in my head these are going to be two different games.
Yeah,
They're not gonna be like a one AP and then a second AP. I think there's gonna be
right.
one game that's coming out real soon that's gonna be, I don't know, who knows, like a tower defense game even, or match 3
Right.
kind of game, right? That's on mobile, and then, well, I think they said the game even coming out this year is going to be out on S
Oh, I did not see that part.
maybe
That
I
would
maybe
be
I
that would be
um,
good. Now, that wouldn't directly prohibit it from being on mobile, but it'd be more likely,
yeah.
well, it says, aligned
Yeah,
with,
one launching on Steam later this year, but,
yeah,
like, that if, launching on Steam says to me that that is less of a mobile-only
right,
game, so it doesn't have to
right.
be as constrained
PC
as like
console. Yeah,
yeah, as an Angry Birds or a
right.
Candy Crush or something like that. But
Mhm,
a game like Slay the Spire, Monster Train, which is a
mhm,
card-based sort of dungeon game,
right.
roguelike sort of situation. I could
Mhm,
see that. I could see that going over pretty well.
mhm,
But it would be a whole new thing. It would be like completely based, not based on any current. I guess you could do a Tomb of Annihilation, not Tomb of sorry, Abomination Vaults, um, roguelike, where you're going into
mm,
the dungeon, into the levels of the dungeon, and your party stuff. But in terms of like mechanic wise, it's not gonna. That might not be. That's not gonna be.
right, 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 right.
So,
Yeah,
the,
it go ahead.
no, no, I'm talking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, looking at their designs, it doesn't look like they do something like with the Unreal Engine with 3D, modeling and stuff. So it's not like that's the type of game we're gonna get. I think it's more somewhere kinda in between, and one of the things that I really enjoyed back in the day was, BioWare's Neverwinter Nights. I don't know if you've ever
Mm.
played
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
campaign. It was
Yeah.
based kinda, 3.0 and 3.5, and you used all the basic rule set that was just basically programmed into the game, and you could build characters just like you could in D&D. And D. And then they had 3D rendering where you would interact with the monsters, and again, D&D monsters stuff were all stated out. I would like something where if they created a game engine, right, a 2nd edition game engine where all that stuff was available, then if you wanted to, you could play an AP, right? So they had a way to bring that in the back end, all the stats, right? And, the nice thing about Neverwinter Nights, basically, all the stats just came in on a MySQL server. Just
Mm,
they were just numbers, and it brought them in, and then the engine rendered everything and built it out. But if you had something like that, then you could do home brews, you could do your own campaign, you could do it, an AP that came in, you could do society play, you could do anything, right? Because it was all the engine is basically all built, and as you updated the rule set, you could have updates to that as well, similar to what Neverwinter Nights had. Um, and that's kind of like the isomorphic kind of
mm.
game, right? It's a third party view, a third person view, and everything. I think I think that would be a lot of fun,
Oh, yeah.
myself, and, I played on a hosted a realm, and we, had hundreds of players on this, sometimes thousands of players across it, and it was great building up characters and doing things like that, and then already knowing all the feats and skills and spells because of what you'd already played in D. So
Right, yeah. I mean, that's, like, one step removed from a virtual tabletop,
right, exactly,
and
exactly,
vaguely reminiscent of what D&D, Wizards is doing with their, upcoming virtual tabletop, what they say they're doing with it. Gonna be
right,
all, build it you can create anything you want, and here, we'll give you all the terrain and look like little mini that.
right,
But, like, yeah, 7 of having a robust creation engine like Neverwinter Nights had would it would blow up for sure. Because although, to be honest, I don't know, like, how much, like, do I'm not as plugged in to how much people do that anymore. Like, I know there was, like,
yeah, I
like
don't
a
know,
Halo engine that you could make your own Halo
right,
levels, and people were doing that, but, like, is it things seem to either be, like, single player or weird, uh, live service game situation, right, where it's just you just play it like Destiny, you just play it infinitely until you're bored with
right.
it. Um,
Yeah, the
Something in
modding,
between that.
isn't the same. I don't know
Yeah.
how big that is, yeah. I think
It
it's a
seems to
fair
me like it
point.
would be. It would be
Mhm,
big. I mean, people would, like, do basically what you said, would make, scenarios, right? Society scenarios, and just be like, "Man, play this, and here's all the scripting and whatever." That stuff is not easy. I think I remember trying. "Oh, yeah, I'll
yeah.
make an adventure," and it's like, "Oh, no, this is too hard for me. I don't know what the heck I'm doing."
Yeah, you needed some programming skills, and so I
Yeah,
was fortunate. I had a programmer that was doing most of that, and we had a design team that said what we wanted to do, and we had a couple of programmers that would basically put it in place. So you wanted, whatever room, so the places that you would go, the creatures you would go, the loot you would have, and things like that. But even, if you just played just the core game and had the basic rule set where you're not doing a lot of home brewing, you could bring in anything that was published in at that time and available in the game, and you could just bring it in and populate, pretty basic stuff. So I think you could do it. You wouldn't have to be a total modder to do it. You could just do it as somebody who interfaces with the game, which is what I think most people would be at, but it would still allow for some growth. Um, I almost wonder if this is trying to be like, an answer to D&D Beyond's, virtual tabletop that Wizards is,
I
building out.
I don't know. I feel like it would be announced as such. Like, these are being announced as video game, right? And a
Yeah,
virtual
yeah,
tabletop is not a video game.
yeah,
And you need someone to run both, be at both ends of the GM screen, so to speak, right? Whereas a video game has a
right.
AI, not the AI that we know of that we talk about
Yeah,
today, but basically there is,
yeah.
gosh, what do they call that? Call it AI in video games too. Just sort of
That's the game engine,
yeah, the
that
game
drives
engine
everything.
running
Yeah,
things, and deciding what the
yeah.
morales of the monsters are or whatever. And um, but
Well, it's
I'm
fun to
excited.
guess. I don't know.
Sure, it is fun to guess. If you
Yeah,
had, your druthers, and you were in charge of, say, like, a Starfinder video game, what
mhm.
what kind of game would you want it to be?
Oh, well, that's interesting because I'd want multiple layers on it. I definitely want, I want starship combat like
Okay.
you would get in Star Wars instead,
Mhm.
right? all you have a ton of Star Wars games out there. I'd want
Mhm.
some of that. I want some individual combat,
Mhm.
and interaction and stuff. Um, I don't think I would necessarily want it, as I mentioned, I don't want it just to mimic the rule set and have you be able to import your characters. I don't want to,
Right.
for a video game, I don't really want something that is just an extension of a virtual tabletop. I actually want a full
Yeah.
blown video game where
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
do things and just have the setting and the basic the iconics and the worlds and use all that lore in the game,
Mhm.
but have
Mhm.
a full blown video game out of it. A
Right.
AAA title. Um, what about you?
I would look at something like Mass Effect.
Okay,
Which has like good shooting and or I guess you can have powers, you can run up and punch people too. But like then like walking around and doing quests, right? And having the conversations, right? Add all that in. And then do what you said, which is basically add on a layer of Star Wars squadrons or
right.
X-Wing, the TIE fighter games. And those are the three those would be the three pillars of the
Mhm.
game. So it would be a big sweeping, epic role-playing game adventure, right?
Yeah,
Talking like 40, 50 hours to go through, right? Side quests thrown in there.
yeah, yeah.
Probably you'd start at Epsilon Station, or maybe what you would do is, you do it like a little bit like the first Mass Effect, was you kind of start on one thing and have a little tutorial level where you do some shooting
Right,
and people
right,
and
right,
whatever,
right,
and then you arrive at Absalom Station like you were Citadel Mass Effect, right? Opens up. Here's all the people you can go over here and talk to these people and get these side quests and whatever, and then kind of allow it to be um what I'm explaining might be what, Starfield is going to be like, perfectly honest,
okay,
which is a game that meant to come out last year, but it's gonna come out at the end of this fall. It looks like it's Bethesda, so it looks like it's Fallout-ish,
right, right, right.
Skyrim in space, right?
Hmm.
Flying around, you couldn't go anywhere and do anything, right? Like, Ma Mass Effect was a little, because it was, a while back, had a little more, like, more linearity and go and what you do and be like, "Oh,
Right,
I'm going
not
to
an
this
open
planet," and
world. Yeah,
not as much open world, but like an
yeah,
open giant oh my god, like an open galaxy, get some side quests, go over here and do this. Maybe there's like a radiant dynamic way like that generates side quests like they did for Skyrim, even though
right,
those were pretty basic. It took me, it took me like a day or two to realize that those Skyrim quests were being generated for me. I was like, I'm gonna do all this guy's quests, and he's like, "Oh, here's another one." I'm like, "Go kill this giant
they
lair." Okay,
keep
and then another
coming.
guy.
Yeah,
And then, oh, there's so many quests this guy has, and then I was like, "Wait
yeah,
a minute, these are being just generated, aren't
yeah,
they?" Ah,
yeah.
dang it! Let me get back on the main story. But like, and then have a big main story that is one of the big bads. Maybe Swarm, maybe Corpse Fleet, maybe, and not
Mhm.
necessarily a direct translation of Dead Sons or uh, Attack of the Swarm or something like that. But maybe those elements we take a
Right,
lot of those APs and we filter them through the video game lens, because you make a main character, and you gather up a small crew, and maybe it's like, oh, I
right,
take two people with me when I go on this mission, and that would be real fun to have such a whole cast of wacky. Would you? I mean, like, the Outcat games don't use too many of the iconics.
right.
Amiri can be in your party, I think,
Mhm, mhm.
but would you use the iconics at all?
Well, so I like what you're talking about, and I would, to answer your question, I would have kind of multiple layers. So I really like MMORPGs, and so one of
Okay.
the things I would have is the ability to play by yourself with a bunch of NPCs, and you can have the iconics available, or those roles could be filled in by other player characters. So I think
Okay.
that would be fun to have a team. I did a lot of Guild Wars, a lot of PvP and gameplay, and I loved working with a team. And pretty much any team based game you could do something similar, right? So I would love to have something like that. I would also like kind of I don't know if this would be an upper end thing or a side thing. I'd like to have some world building or fleet building. um, so I one of the games I liked way back in the day was Command and Conquer, where you
Mhm,
kind of
mhm.
build up forces, build up things, and then attack at a grander scale.
Yeah.
So here we're talking about a lot of individual stuff, and I think that's great. But I also like, in terms of video games and stuff, Eve Online, where you have massive, massive fleets attacking, and so
Yeah.
you could have it you against the AI, or man, if you could get enough people playing, you have, here's your giant fleet here from the pack worlds going against this giant fleet from the Swarm or the Viscarium or
Yeah.
whatever. Now that would be a grand end game
God,
kind of thing.
an Eve online style MMO, that's bonkers. It was so much
No,
to upkeep and whatever.
yes,
We're, completely
yeah,
blue sky here. I would almost though think of it being as like a separate game. Like if you do want to do a home world, for instance,
yeah,
would that would translate where just sort of massive fleet battles and you're building up your fleets.
right.
Or even like what would be fun would be something for XE, like Stellaris, kind of like that, in
Okay,
space
right,
where
right,
you
right,
are you do it's like Civ, but Alpha Centauri, right? Where you just you
right,
pick a thing, you pick a planet, and you're building it off there, and
right, 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 right,
doing you're sort of the macro of it all. You're not a single person. You're just government of the
right.
planet or what conquer other worlds, settle other.
Mhm.
Because I mean,
And
there's a
again,
lot of
those
ways to
are
go.
yeah, those are kind of the bigger scale things. And I'm just
Yeah,
thinking, as when we used to play D&D and we get to the really high levels, we started thinking and homebrewing, okay, now we get a keep, now we get a castle, now
yeah,
we take over lands because individual monsters and it was we were thinking kind of a grander long-term thing. And
sure, yeah,
so for me, again, talking with a video game, there's all these different layers that would be fun, and it could be first person shooter, it could be MMORPG, it could be these big world building things, it could be a straight, remake of the Paizo games. I mean, there's a lot of different things
yeah.
that would be fun, and I don't really know. I don't know that Paizo could pull off a big AAA title like that. First of all,
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be up
yeah,
to Paizo. It would be up to whoever they're partner with. If, for instance, Obsidian came down the line and was
yeah,
like, "Hey, I put them in AAA, even though but they're probably like
yeah,
AA. But like,
yeah,
so yeah, if someone like Obsidian were to come in, because it wouldn't be up to Paizo, it'd be up to
right.
whoever they're licensed with. Someone like Obsidian came in, I would trust them to take the lore given to them and
Oh, right, right,
make
right.
something
I
good.
I don't mean that the capability of making the game. It's more, so the issue with a AAA and maybe a double A as well, but a AAA title especially is just the amount of marketing you gotta put behind it.
Mm,
And I just don't know that that's part of Paizo's strategic plan to spend that much time and effort to market a video game title versus their own stuff. If they could and they
right.
were successful, that might pull up their main offerings, but you're talking tens of millions of dollars in marketing, if not more, for a AAA title, and to make it successful. And
Yeah,
I don't see them wanting to do that. That's my was more my point. I don't think it's just
that's fair.
in the thing that they would do.
Yeah, although again, that's also kind of also up to the licensor in a way, right? It'd be like whoever's publishing this thing, because Pio's not going to be publishing the video. It's
Yeah.
going to be whoever, right? Microsoft or ZeniMax or whatever, and they're gonna be the ones doing a lot of the marketing too. But like, yeah, but Paizo needs to put in the
Because the
effort
brand
too.
isn't strong enough already,
Yeah,
you wouldn't want to invest more building that brand just for the video game. What you want is, quite frankly, you want a brand that stands on its own enough to have its own movie and has a long
yeah,
track. This is why D&D is actually
yes,
in better shape and other games as well, quite frankly. Um, but I think that the niche that they're going to get is going to be appealing to their own players, quite frankly, and then
yeah,
attract in new players into the game, which is probably
yeah.
what they're trying to do.
Well, I mean, that's probably the very reason that we have not seen a super AAA Pathfinder Starfinder video game because the brand is not strong enough to attract the big
Right?
AAA,
Yeah.
even double A people, designers and developers, and because that takes a lot of money to make a video game,
Right.
especially a big
Yeah.
40-hour epic, sweet, whatever,
Mhm.
you know.
Now, with you were there when Alcat was coming out with their games.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that when that was all interesting. Oh, we're gonna do that, and it's this, again, Alcat did. I think they did a great job, although to be perfectly, frank, I never played them all the way through because
Yeah.
I get distracted. It's just a little bit like, oh, I've played a lot of Baldur's Gate, and I played a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
Planescape,
yeah.
played Planescape, and I played all these games before when I had more time to play those
Right,
types of games, and now if I started them and I go, "Oh, this is pretty cool, I like it," but also like, "I wanna just play Pathfinder now for with
right,
people
right, right,
and
right,
not
right.
just play it." But, I totally support the games, and I think they're great.
Well,
But they were sort of this no, we didn't know who they were. There's some Owlcat, some basically Russian game studio that we didn't know.
right. Yeah, I was gonna ask, was there much coordinated effort behind them releasing that and what you did and developed or marketed, for on the
I
Pathfinder
mean,
side?
I don't know. I mean, I think the Kingmaker coming out pushed the eventual Kickstarter to push it into second edition. I don't know. I
Right,
think that was all probably related because, well, also just Kingmaker's the more popular AP, so why not
right.
try to put it out? Right? That might just be it was made in a video game because it was a popular AP, and it was rebooted the second edition because it was a
So it
popular.
helped
I don't think they
they
were.
both kinda
Yeah,
helped each other. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It kind of there was no real connection between the two. I mean, but also I was working on Starfinder
Right.
at the time, so I would really have a whole lot. And I know that like there were people at Paizo who were like got to write dialogue trees or that kind of stuff just
Mhm.
to read over the quest, whatever, and it worked. So I got a little more hands-on. I think from what I remember correct, this was around about the same time that speaking of Obsidian, they were doing the adventure card game app,
Hmm. Mhm.
right? And I think it was all like, oh, they're gonna maybe do a Pathfinder full Pathfinder video game, and I was all very excited. And I think they ended up being the ones who like connected Paizo to Alcat. I think they worked
Oh,
somehow
okay.
like that. So
Yeah.
oh, we know these guys, and they do good work. You should think Pathfinder video. I think that's how that worked. Don't quote me on that.
I somebody else could quote you. I definitely won't.
Fair enough. Please don't one out there quote me on that. I'm kind of guessing. I just remember that sort of all kind of mixing up like that Obsidian and Alcat kind of happening kind of simultaneously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was just kinda curious. I've been I've talked to a couple people who have tried to, come up with their own both Starfinder and Pathfinder,
Yeah.
video games, and one of them had talked about specifically getting the rule set and basically putting into a game. They were looking into Paizo licensing. Paizo licensing is actually quite affordable for folks,
Hmm,
anybody that's
cool.
interested in doing that. But I don't think either of them really had the programming chops to do that, and so that means getting a team
Yeah.
and it's expensive. It's expensive,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and as I mentioned before, just getting the marketing to get the word out. So I don't think either of those are going to materialize, and they could have been pipe dreams to start with. I don't know,
Yeah.
how f- how far along they went.
Early in the Starfinder life cycle, I actually had someone come up to me, IsoCon, talk to me a little bit about like, "Oh, I want to make this game that's set on Elite Trio." Do you remember? Because they're talking to me
Yeah,
about yesterday's Truth and yesterday's.
yeah,
Well, it was just
yeah,
yesterday's Truth was the only one out. And
yeah.
like, I want to make this game that's set on Elite Trio, and you play Jabrani, and it's like a survival game. Oh, that sounds pretty cool. Uh, you know, Send me an email at some point, and I'll yeah. But if you're out there, I hope you're still at it. And good luck,
Okay,
because it sounded pretty cool to me.
nice, nice. Yeah. We'll have to talk offline because maybe it's the same person. I don't know.
I don't remember their name to be perfectly honest, so I'm sorry out there, but it was a cool idea. We talked about it for a little bit at the time.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, so this is an interesting move for them. The other thing I was thinking is the timing of this announcement and what's
Hmm.
coming out in relation to the orc,
Right?
right? Because the orc, they had their
Yes.
first draft
Yes.
of the new open role playing game license from Paizo that they're
Mhm.
sponsoring is been out, and I would suspect that any video games that they're making will not be under the OGL
No.
and would instead be under Orc, which means they would be second edition rule set, obviously,
Yeah.
which also is one of the reasons why they're probably just Pathfinder and not Starfinder at this point, because
Right.
that's a little bit
Yeah.
more difficult reach, I think.
I mean, it's all mixed up. It's like the brand is a little bit weaker than the Pathfinder brand in some ways, right? It's not as widespread. People just sort of grok the fantasy aesthetic a lot more than the sort of general sci-fi aesthetic that Starfinder is. Every sci-fi aesthetic, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it's the flagship brand, Pathfinder. makes sense that it games and again,
Oh, right,
first
right,
twice in a row. But, yeah, I mean, like, again, depending on what the video game is, it might not need anything like an OGL. It's just got the Pathfinder brand on it. Like, you can put out, um, Pathfinder comics without having to do an OGL attached to it. And I do know that, like, old 3.5 based video games, a couple of them, we've talked about when the whole thing was happening, well, had the OGL in them.
right,
What didn't need I don't think they needed to. I don't think it was, even though they were using the same mechanics, I really think that Knights of the Old Republic, for instance, didn't need to have the OGL attached to it in any way, but it did. So I could see them both doing the sort of the same thing here with this is a translation of the mechanics. They might want to do that.
right.
They might not. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary either way.
Well, I was just thinking that just with the timing that perhaps
Yeah.
this was delayed until they made sure that they were gonna be on track to have that, and it could be, but you're right, maybe it's depending on how the video game is designed, it might not even matter.
Yeah, it might not matter. But I think partially too, it's like better to come out of nowhere. Say, hey, there's going to be a game out this fall, and announce a game 3 years down the line, and then have to delay it
Yes.
another year, and then delay it
Yes.
another year, and nothing happens with it. So this is a fun, and it keeps the excitement high when you say
Yeah.
like, oh, this is coming out. Oh, we don't know what it is yet, and I suspect we'll probably know. And that Gamma trade show is in like that. We might know more at the end of that. We might get a glimpse of this at PaizoCon on Memorial Day weekend. Not a glimpse of it exactly, but just at least a title or an idea of what it is. It's
Mhm.
coming out later this year is pretty vague, but
Yeah, if I were trying to make a big splash, Gen Con's it. I would
it's
might
true. Yeah.
maybe try to, but it's a video game too, though, so maybe you'd
Yeah.
wanna, you're looking at the broader video game audience rather than the role-playing guy audience, so that could change things.
I
Hmm,
I mean, if it comes out
yeah,
at Gen Con, that would still be a big deal because
right,
it would, yeah, like you said, it would get connection. There were always video games at Gen.
mhm,
There was always a smaller portion, and often they were D&D video games. But,
yeah,
I think there was some, I mean, I get Paizo 2 had at points that Alcat and Obsidian there sort of promoting the card game app and the Kingmaker game and stuff like that. But, if it is sort of like, we find out what it is at PaizoCon, get it at Gen Con. Wow, amazing.
yeah,
Right, that would be
yeah, or if they're keeping it Seattle based, it could be PAX Prime, the big, release
that's a
time as
big
well.
that's also a big video game
Yeah,
convention more
that's what I'm
than
saying,
any
it's a
Gen
big
Con.
video and it's in the neighborhood, so
When is that usually? Like
Labor
September?
Day, Labor Day weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's right.
I used to go every Labor Day when I was, leading the charge on a bunch of video games, that's where I would go. So, PAX Prime, and until they introduced all the other PAX, that one was just, oh, man, it was impossible to get weekend tickets, and,
Wow.
just the number of people at the Seattle Convention Center was just crazy. It wasn't at the size of, San Diego Comic-Con, but for
Right.
an East Coast con, I mean, I think the last time I went there was 80,000 plus. It was pretty big,
Wait,
a good
you said
size.
East Coast.
I'm sorry, West Coast,
Is
West Coast,
West Coast,
West Coast
okay,
stuff.
right.
Yeah, so San Diego
'Cause there
Comic
is a
Con,
PAX East,
yeah, yeah, there is a packed East, there's a packed, UK, there's a PAX,
right, all that.
in Australia and all that. There's a PAX South, I think now. Um, and I don't even know if they call this PAX West or PAX Prime. I just consider it PAX Prime.
I mean,
You
it
know,
was the first one.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, and it's exciting. And there's just very little. I mean, Paizo has a little bit of a organized play presence there, and
Yeah.
but not much else.
I think I went to one sort of like my 1st or 2nd year in Seattle. Just got a ticket because needed volunteers, and I volunteered to, like, go there and help out, and then I went to go help out, and they were like, "We don't need your help. Go enjoy the con." I'm like, well, I mean, I
Oh,
got a free ticket, so
how long ago was
why
that?
not?" God, it was then 8 years ago. No, not 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years
Okay,
ago.
because I might have been there running tables when you were there.
You might have been, John. You might have been.
So, it's kind of funny. Oh,
Yeah.
very cool. Well, anyway, we don't know anything
No.
about these
We don't
video
know
games
anything, and so
coming
it's
out.
fun to speculate.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's all this is. And if we're right on anything, then that'll be great. But
yeah. So I've been sort of in preparation for this, John. I thought a little bit about games that you can play right now
Oh,
that
yeah.
have kind of a Starfinder vibe to them, or at least what I think is a Starfinder vibe to them.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna bring up Obsidian again for the
Okay.
first one, and because the Outer Worlds is
Mm.
a fun sort of again. Obsidian made Fallout New Vegas, right? So they are familiar with that sort of
Right.
thing. So it is very kind of like Fallouty in terms of game mechanics,
Mhm.
at least the newer Fallout ones. Right? It's first person. You have a you get into fights outside of town. You go in the town, have conversations, and go on quests and solve mysteries and stuff like that. But the vibe I feel is Starfinder-y in some ways because it's got this kind of capitalism is bad vibe to it. And all, it's sort of like all these. Not that I think Starfinder has that running through it, but like in my brain, that's how it's kind of. And it does have goofy things like energy-based weapons that do fire and cold, and then shrink people's heads and turn them into goo or something like that. So there's some fun stuff there, and there's
Yeah.
some fun creatures, but mostly it's sort of a lot of like bad space pirates, and but it's like has this like at one point it has this mascot. There's this company called Spacer's Choice, and it's got this moon-headed mascot that I feel like that's sort of very much a kind of fun. It has this kind of like vaguely 40s, 50s vibe to some of the
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
advertisements, and then
Yeah.
yet but it's the future. So,
Right.
that's a good one. I had fun with that. A game that is, probably less about sort of adventures, but is kinda has a little bit of a Starfinder vibe in it is, a game called Hard Space Shipbreaker.
Haven't seen
And
that
it's
one.
kind of it's a game about demolishing starships in a sort of
Oh,
space yard, by yourself, and you're supposed to, like, have a gravity gun, and you're sort of cutting things apart, and you have to make sure not to cut the fuel line because then it'll explode, and that brings your profits down. But overall, Hard Space Shipbreaker is a game about unions, because you find out that, as you're running, you start out, like, $9 billion in debt or something like that, and you doing all these jobs is what gets you out of debt, but then you find out, as you're going, like, it's like you don't have any health insurance. Or if you die, you kind of you get cloned, and they charge you for the clone. It's very much sort of again sort of an anti-capitalist kind
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
thing, but and then has a very union positive message. I enjoyed that. It's very in a way it's kind of calm and soothing. You're just gonna get in there. You have a cutter and a thing, a gravity gun. And you're throwing things in the fire, and you gotta throw the right things into the fire and right things into the recycling bin, and that. But it has good scale too. Spaceship, and you figure out how to decompress it without damaging the stuff inside. Because all that's good salvage. So salvaging game. Um, I would say after now, it's been a while. Like No Man's Sky, it's kind of a good space vibe to it. It sort of started off pretty, I think, pretty basic, but now they've added a lot of stuff now. But that's a game where you kind of like have a whole universe. Kind of go to
Mm,
any planet,
mhm.
you fly around. It is kind of a crafting, survival-y kind of game.
Right, right.
You get to, you go and you gather resources with a resource gun or whatever, and then build a base, and you got to fuel for your spaceship to go to the next place. I played that for a little bit. I thought that was pretty fun. But now, even now, so it's got more factions and people to do quests for and stuff like that. It was more
Mhm,
kind of a role playing, but mostly just a crafting type game. And Yeah, I'm gonna say those 3. Those 3 are pretty good. I mentioned Starfield earlier. I'm sure that's gonna feel like fun Starfinder-esque, at least more. That's probably gonna be a little more grounded. It's not gonna have magic in it. A lot of these, though, don't have, like, that combination of sci-fi and magic. Most of them are just sort of
right.
like sci-fi. That's gonna be so I think that's a good, market, maybe a good genre that doesn't really come up. There are a couple Shadowrun video games, but those
Mhm,
are
mhm.
distinctly Shadowrun.
Right, right,
I
right,
mean,
right.
right, and then there's something different between, I guess you could talk a little bit about a Star Wars game is kind of Starfinder, right? If you play um, Old Knights of the Old Republic, speaking of
Right,
MMOs, or some of the newer Star Wars Squadrons has the dogfighting in space.
right.
And I'm pretty excited. Actually, putting them out pretty soon is a new Jedi
Oh, yeah.
Survivor, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
yeah.
I played the first one, love that. But that is again though those are all very Star Warsy, and so you're not going to necessarily get a Starfinder feel out of it, but it's they're tangentially.
Yeah, I maybe Cyberpunk as well is something that, And
Yeah.
you have some of that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I didn't play that too much.
Yeah,
Or I think I just played a little bit of the demo, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is cool."
just kinda some well,
Yeah.
neat. Well, hopefully, we get a Starfinder game someday, but I'm not
Yeah.
hold my breath for that.
Well, don't don't hold your breath about it for sure, but you never know.
Never know. Alright. Well, this has been a lot of fun again.
Yep.
I'm John.
And I'm Jason, and this has been Digital Divination.